Hi, and welcome to another Making Sense of It with me, Emma Kenny.
And me, Peter Smith.
It's been a bit of a while since we did our last podcast. Obviously, if you're listening to us next year, you won't know this, but we have had a bit of a hiatus. It's been a bit of a dodgy year, hasn't it?
It has.
So far.
And I say it's only, what is it, February?
Yeah, it's been a dodgy year so far. It's one of those things where if you join me from the beginning of this podcast, the first two being the ropey ones, if you managed to weather that particular storm.
They were ropey. I checked them out the other day, actually.
Really bad.
Yeah.
It's like a pilot, isn't it?
It was a pilot.
But they still give it a chance. They're like, that was terrible. Let's see what we can do with better equipment.
I feel like I should delete them.
Well, it's part and parcel of it, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
So if you've stayed with us and weathered the storm, you'll also know that during the process of us talking that we've been through some pretty traumatic times, like losing my best friend and dealing with lots of life issues. And when we got to the end of last year, which was 2018, one of the things that I said I wasn't going to do, because for the last 4 years, I have literally said, oh, next year's going to be a better year. I feel it, I feel like it's going to be a better year. And I obviously never want to pretend that I'm not happy. Like, I have an amazing family. I've got amazing people around me. I have a life that, when you look at the rest of the world, is enviable. And truth be told, I don't have anything to really moan about on that context. But on a personal life level, things have been really quite traumatic in the past 4 years. And also on a business level, because we've been through administration with my company and lots of other bits and pieces. So this year we decided that we'd make a conscious effort not to say, next year's going to be a great year. Because one, I'm middle-aged.
Not going to fall into that trap again.
That's right. I'm middle-aged, so things are going to happen. Nothing you can do about it. But I guess that when I was saying that, what I wasn't expecting was things to go so horribly wrong towards the end of last year, and in a way that was completely outside of what my expectation would have been. So there are things that I can expect could be challenging, such as, like, I work in TV, I work in the media. That's always challenging because you're only ever as good as your last job. If you don't know the right people, which I never have done, never. If you keep your world small, so I don't go to any awards, I don't go to any, connections where you go network, I just don't like it. My job is going to always be something that's limited. I'm good at what I do, but there'll be somebody coming up through the ranks who knows the right people and looks younger and better and all of those things. So that's got an insecurity level that I'm kind of used to. And I always say it's cool because I'll just make money selling biscuits because I like people and I like biscuits.
She makes good biscuits.
Sell the best biscuits. And in the end, I'd have like an international, multinational
biscuit company
that Vitties would be jealous of. And I'd sell it all with love. But
what would you call it?
I don't know. I've not thought that far ahead. I just know they'd be great. I wouldn't do too many. I would like to just cultivate the best, maybe 6 or 7 products, like just to keep it small.
Yeah.
My world small thing is good.
And then after when you've got to go and spend years thinking about a new product.
That's right. And people would be like, oh my God, Emma's biscuits are just like the most amazing biscuits, but I wish she'd do because it'd be better than any of the other rivals. But like you said, it would take 15 years for the formula to be correct. And then I'd have like just tasters that would come from all different chronologies, and only when all of them had agreed.
It would be like sort of like a Charlie in a chocolate factory type of thing. Willy Wonka, Emma Wonka, like where it's just like all these like amazing, like you have like a little factory. It would be quite large, wouldn't it?
Are you suggesting that I would emancipate a civilization who are going extinct and store them in my own factory?
I am.
Well,
I am.
Would I have squirrels
now,
that were able to test what nuts
Would
were
you have
right?
just one person being that?
No.
Or millions of them?
I'm afraid that I don't even consider Willy Wonka, the second Johnny Depp, ever to be. And anybody who has watched that and not seen the original, then I'm incredibly sad for you because the original, Gene Wilder played that part with the best approach. And the songs still resonate in my head. Anyway, we digress. Because I'm not making biscuits yet.
Gene Wilder is my Willy Wonka. So.
Gene Wilder should be everybody's Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Everybody's.
Yeah.
The lemonade, which ruined it, but it was okay because at the end of the day, he was
Too many flaws in that lemonade scene.
There's flaws in pretty much all of it, particularly the glass elevator.
It's real to me.
Anyway, so we digress. So my life is not a difficult life in the fact when you compare it to challenges in other countries, for example. So I'm not being sad for myself. But what I didn't want to do is to start saying to myself, next year's going to be A, B, and C, because you can set goals, can't you? But you can't necessarily see them through when other people have got control over that. And TV's a bit like that. I don't have any control over my TV work. I get a phone call, I do it. Simple as that. If the phone calls don't come, won't do it anymore. But then in October, if you've listened to this podcast before we kind of disappeared, if you are a regular listener, then my dad got really seriously ill. So if any of me is, any of you have followed me at all on social media over the years, and any of you might not, you will note that I refer to mental illness quite a lot. And you'll also note that I don't stray from the issue of the fact that most of us struggle with mental health issues, and that my experience is personal with mental illness. So my dad had a breakdown 20 years ago, and it was a really serious breakdown. It was 20 years ago exactly to the month.
Crazy.
Isn't that insane? It's 20 years ago exactly
it's
to
like
the
you
month.
had like a body anniversary going on,
So dad got a UTI, and basically if you've got an elderly parent, my dad's not elderly, he's 76, he's like a sprightly young man, or he was at least until he got pretty ill. But he basically got a UTI. They can throw people, they can basically trip people's brains and cause inflammation, for example, and it sends them into essentially psychosis. Now, for most people, it's quite quick to get remedied. Antibiotics get sorted and, they get treated quickly. Dad sadly got sepsis and nearly died. So he ended up 24 hours, basically, he'd been dead. But the hospital treated him for his sepsis, did really well, didn't they? Yeah. But what had happened is prior to the sepsis, he'd started to get persecutory. So he thought that the world was against him. He thought that his family hated him. And it was really hard. And basically, when they let him go home after the sepsis, he was still delusional. We managed it at home. It was exhausting. So from October until now, so Pete and me, I should say, my brother Ash and my mum and pretty much the rest of the family have just been obsessively caring for my father to keep him out of hospital. My dad had a really bad experience 20 years ago in a psychiatric facility. It was so bad that after 7 days, I said I would sue them and I would get them in every paper. And I didn't even have a profile then, but that's how I felt moved at that point. I was like, whatever I need to do, I will absolutely expose this system, which is dreadful. So we kept him out of hospital. And unfortunately, they'd taken him off the medication. So he came off the antipsychotics 6 months early, he came off all the tablets that were required. We didn't realise that he should still be on them. We kept getting told it was just delirium, not psychosis. And it turns out it was psychosis. So my dad got really, really, really ill. And on one particular day, he unfortunately was left on his own for about 4 minutes in between my mum leaving for an appointment and my brother coming to look after him because we were kind of babysitting him. And my father really badly harmed himself, which resulted again in him going to hospital. Like most people who get to be in a position where they've harmed themselves, you can go home. So the idea that if you've harmed yourself, you're going to get admitted into a ward is just not true. They don't have the resources. So we were like, of course, we wanted to get him home. But a few days later, we just couldn't get him to take his tablets.
No.
I wasn't there, sadly, which is really regretful. I still feel a great deal of guilt about that. My brother took him to hospital and they talked him into going into a voluntary admission, which sounds fine. But what a voluntary admission means is that you've agreed, because you have insight and capacity to agree to go into a psychiatric facility. And then from that moment onwards, we just fought to get him out, didn't we?
Yeah, because it's still, even though it's voluntary sort of section yourself, it's still, you've got to get the say from the doctors again. They've got to tell you that you're allowed to go home. And it was just, it's to be fair. Not to be fair. In fact, I'm just going to have to say it. I just think that, like you said as well, it's an asylum. They still exist, and if people out there think that a mental ward is just a ward where there's it's not, and it's asylum. If you think, and I can't, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it like, what I mean. It was when you watch One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the film, bar the age of sort of
and the evil sister,
and the evil sister, yeah. But obviously the evil sister and stuff like that. The nurses are a lot better, but there is a couple there that are horrible. That's what it is. It is an asylum, and I just think that the system, the government, the NHS need to take a long, hard look of how they are treating people with mental. Like you just done a great video last week about mental health versus mental illness. So if you haven't watched that, it's on this channel. So go and watch it, and it's a really good look at what mental illness is and mental health issues are. So the difference between it. And like you're saying, they just had everybody shoved in there, treat the same.
So it's like if you've got schizophrenia, dissociative disorder, dementia, psychosis, maybe you're struggling with acute depression, mass bipolar, and you're all in the same place being treated the same. It's like putting somebody with a leg injury in the same ward as somebody with liver cancer. You literally can't treat them in the same way, but that's all that happens. And like Pete's right, the nurses weren't nasty in any way, shape or form, although my father was threatened with a section on 3 occasions because he wouldn't do things.
There's a lot of undertraining going on.
So basically, just in case anybody's listening, you're dealing with somebody who's in a voluntary position in a psychiatric ward. Basically, the law says you can come and go as you please. As long as you are not a threat to yourself or others, you can leave and come as you please. But the problem is that they don't like that because that means that they don't have that kind of authority over you and they don't know what you're going to go and do. So it's easier if somebody wishes to leave to say to them, well, I'm sorry, we're going to have to section you. Now, that's not actually allowed. It's an illegal framework to offer that position to somebody who's unwell. And it happened to my father on 3 occasions.
It's a threat and it's blackmail, isn't it?
And on the 3rd occasion, it was said in front of me. And I think that's probably the last thing she'll ever say to anybody. And she's very lucky that I haven't gone further than I have gone, and I've only done that because the psychiatrist, who I did not connect with at all, and I have to say on a personal level, I didn't like her at all. Most importantly, a panel of adult professionals should not be the individuals that you have to sit in front of when you're trying to get home, because actually you're already vulnerable. My dad would have agreed to have his hair shaved off and ECT if he could have gone home. He'd have done anything. So that's not the right place. However, with testament to that psychiatrist, she got him the right drugs. She gave him home leave when I demanded it. It wasn't a request. When I said I'm taking him home and I'm going to keep him at home for the next 2 nights, again, even though they could have really gone against me, I think she knew at that point I'm not going to do that. And she actually did, with respect to her, all the way along. We didn't connect as people, but as a professional, I'm not going to in any way, shape or form be negative towards her, because whilst it was a horrible position for my dad to be in, it was a terrible ward, it was a terrible treatment on that ward regarding what they actually get to do and the therapy that doesn't occur. As a psychiatrist, she's great. She does exactly what she's meant to do.
I mean, we found out, though, didn't we, that for the whole of Bury, where we're actually from,
she must be
Manchester. There's so many, for all of the over 65s.
Treated by her.
She was the only
Can't imagine
psychiatrist over the top of them all. And it's like all of them in Bury, so it's quite a fair,
But also, what I've got to say about her is, in spite of that, she still came into my father's home to discharge him. He didn't have to go back to the ward. Now, that was something she didn't need to do.
Yeah.
So the reason that we didn't connect as humans is she was quite rude to me. And she also felt that I was pressuring my dad to come home when my dad was actually clearly worried that he had to behave himself to get out. So didn't want to say anything negative. But understandably, her concern with my dad. So I have nothing against her, and I don't actually have anything against the nurses.
I think sometimes, though, that they get so... There's so much going on with them, isn't there? That they forget that these people are individuals sometimes.
Well,
and
I
families
don't know why
Yeah.
anybody needs to speak to somebody who's got mental illness like that. Are you all right, Donald?
Are you too?
Shall we walk down here, Donald? I mean, for God's sake,
That's
how
exactly,
is that acceptable? Well, actually, yes, I am. I'm an educated man who's brought up a really, really great family, and the reality is I can actually speak normally.
Yeah. So why are you speaking to me like I'm just about to get onto the kids' ride at Alton Towers?
The problem is, of course, that if the government were funding it properly, that wouldn't happen, because what's happening there is those nurses, with respect, are the patients of science. They were walking people with dementia up and down those wards on one-to-ones. It was just that if you're quiet and nervous and terrified and sit in a corner, you get no help. That's not their fault. That's the way it works.
There's a big hole in the services.
There is a big hole. Well,
and the amount of money that should be pumped into it is just ridiculous.
Never going to happen.
I know, but it should. And the amount of people that keep shouting from the rooftops about it, we need more mental health. I mean, even more so lately. There's a lot of depression and mental health posts everywhere,
What really upsets me, though, is that in that ward, one, people are desperately trying to get out and aren't getting out because they don't have the capacity and the support framework to kind of put their argument forward in a way. So that's one of the things that's wrong. But secondly, what was really hard for me is watching a ward where no one visits. Like, no one comes. One, it's mixed, so males and females. There's a high level of incidence of abuse for women who develop things like DID or schizophrenia or issues like acute depression or PTSD, all of these things can trip into things like psychosis. So we've got women who potentially are terrified on a ward with men who could be violent. Now, that isn't to say for 1 minute that the men aren't terrified as well. What I'm saying is, imagine your stereotypical thinking. You go into a ward and you're thinking, Jesus Christ, I was raped, ABC, I was abused, ABC. And you're with guys who are a little bit out of control because they're obviously unwell. That's ridiculous. But also, it just felt like these people are examples of what happens when you have somebody with a mental illness in your family. They are exhausting. They are frustrating. They do things that are crazy. I mean, crazy. They scare you, but that must mean in those cases that so many of them never get visitors because people have given up on them. And they don't see that that's not necessary. You know, it's all about getting the right medication. It's all about the right support. And then you can get your human back as well as they were, if not better than before. So like Dad's still not well. We got him out before he got well, but he's getting well. He'll get better because he's got this massive support network around him. But
I mean, you had experienced it 20 years ago. So
it was very different for me, Pete. It was very different for me 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I was a really young woman. Yeah. I'd had a few years working in mental health. I did not operate from the position of a professional. Yeah. All I thought was, get off my dad. Get off him. He looks terrible now he's come to you.
Yeah, I just want to say for everybody that's listening and thinking, you know, they've never experienced anything like cause I hadn't, not like this. So it's you're like, oh yeah. You feel, you sort of agree with that there should be, you know, but you sort of not brush it off, but you just think, that's something I've never really experienced, so hopefully I'm not going to, you know. But when you do, it's like something clicks with you. You become this. It's not like post-traumatic stress disorder, you know. But it's like it's sort of a shock, really. You see it and you can't understand why this person's doing this and what's going on.
Like persecutory thought.
Yeah, you know, and then
like you have to understand what we're talking about with psychosis is that the person genuinely doesn't recognise you. They think that you're being inhabited by another being, so therefore it's your body but slightly different, and you're not the human being. They obsess and fixate, so it could be like 3 or 4 hours looking at a piece of paper without any reasoning behind it.
I could only describe it as like watching somebody that had done like a hallucinogenic experience and it had gone wrong, you know, sort of, you know,
that's why the trial in magic mushrooms with people with psychosis.
And they were stuck in this nightmare of like, you know, and it's so scary to watch. So you sort of realise and you think, now I know why people are shouting from the rooftops and making a big deal out of this mental health situation in the UK. You know, I don't know what it's like in the US or Australia. Or,
US, it's okay if you're private, but it's terrible if you're not.
Yeah,
I guess
so, yeah. Australia, I don't know what it's like. So
again, it's exactly the same. It's Medicare system, so you've got to kind of like pay your way.
So worldwide, I mean, you know, obviously years ago, Victorian times, people stuck in asylums and you see all these...
You know what's really interesting about asylums, though? The average stay in an asylum was 8 weeks, and the average person got well. So isn't that strange? So the average stay in an asylum for poor people was about 8 weeks, and most of them came out and got well.
So do you think it was more like this is horrible, I need to get better? Or
I think that they were a lot less likely to take time medicating. I think it was just like giving them as much as they could be given, whereas we're a lot slower to do that. I'm not saying like asylums were good, they were horrible. My great-granddad was adopted from a poor house, you know, and that was like the workhouse was a really bad place, you know. So they were kind of, if you were in the workhouse and then you were ill mentally, you were sent to an asylum. But I don't know, it's been one of those things. It's like a wake-up call for me, because 20 years ago, obviously, it maintained my interest in and work within the mental health field, and that's why I've always kind of been really advocative in that way. But it's also kind of reminded me that we firstly still don't really talk about mental illness, and we don't know how to talk about it in an open way. And my dad's got just deeply ashamed, really, really ashamed. But the other thing that it's really tripped is we talk constantly about the fact that people just kill themselves. And often you'll hear people saying, well, it came out of the blue. And then there's this subtext, which is, well, they must have been really depressed underneath. They must have been really beside themselves beneath. And that's why they did it. It was all a big secret. They were really desperately unhappy. Like with psychosis, which is my dad's, that just doesn't happen. Like you can trip into psychosis in an hour.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm noticing.
You might never have had it before. But something happens chemically, something happens environmentally, something colludes in that moment. And in that moment, imagine going from sanity to suddenly the world around you is the most terrifying place to experience. You might believe that your partner hates you, your kids are demons, but bear in mind the brain's job is to make sense of its world. So the brain's job is to convince the self that it is sane. The brain can't say to you, I'm insane. The brain is saying, we are thinking this way because it's real. So when my dad was thinking that way with insanity, his job was to confirm that his insanity was in fact sanity, i.e. when he was believing that Pete was a demon or a policeman, his brain was saying, well, if I think it, it must be, therefore I must confirm it. So imagine being somebody who wakes up one day, walks to work, and then suddenly work becomes this place where it's full of demons and aliens, and your brain is telling you that this is real, that you suddenly realise this. If you actually think about it, if you are confirming that fear because you're seeing it and feeling it and hearing it and smelling it, because they're all things that happen with psychosis, it doesn't kind of not stand to reason that you'd throw yourself off a roof. It doesn't not stand to reason that you'd throw yourself off a motorway bridge. And when it comes down to what I consider violent death, and violent deaths is different than what I consider planned death. So a suicider who goes and has 100 paracetamol, probably wouldn't work actually, throw up, but has 20 paracetamol. A person who goes and gets in a car and carbon monoxide poisons himself. Usually there's a plan and process to that. So they'll either know they might have debts, they arguably might have had low-level depression or acute depression for a long time, and they are ready to go and do it. But those that come out of the blue, the classic ones, throwing themselves off motorway bridges, throwing themselves off cliffs, doing something hysterical, burning themselves. The guy I knew set fire to himself on the motorway, never had a day in his life. It was a problem.
Some of the more violent sort of deaths, isn't it?
Destroying the self.
Yeah.
So that to me is why often we don't know why people do kill themselves, because probably their brain has gone into that.
Young man where I used to live, and he had a bad experience, and he became psychotic. The psychosis kicked in after he was away in London, and he was doing some sort of recreational drugs, and then he smoked a lot of weed and stuff, and he got psychosis. So it was obviously in his genes to break a bit, and he had the same persecutory thoughts, the sort of
horrible.
I've got like a camera in my head, they're watching me all the time, and it went on for a while, and I had no inclinations to sort of hurt himself or anything. I went out one day and came back, and he'd out of the blue just gone to the garage and hung himself.
Yeah.
Psychosis had really kicked in, and that was it. I mean, devastated everybody. He was struggling with bits and bobs. Obviously, schizophrenia had somehow been triggered, and that was it. But he had the same persecutory thoughts and different things that everybody has when they're suffering with that type of mental illness, isn't it? It's more a mental illness.
Yeah, it's mental illness. What's really hard though is now, like, watching my dad, who's just the most... Honestly, I can't tell you how people misunderstand mental illness. I really can't. So my dad obviously has a predisposition for psychosis. It's a repeat episode of psychosis. Psychosis is kind of something that we consider acute, episodic, rare. So it's not that it should come back regularly. It's usually something that comes back rarely. But he is so ashamed because he hurt himself. And my brother is so traumatised because my brother found him and saved his life, basically. And to some degree, you just look and think, wow, nobody would be saying that there is an issue of shame if your kidney's packed in because, you've maybe taken too many recreational pills, or maybe you got told by the doctor you've got fatty liver disease and we know that it's because you're drinking. You'd be like, oh, God, better check my behaviour. But you wouldn't be walking around going, I'm deeply ashamed and embarrassed. And like watching like a man who has sacrificed his entire life just to give us whatever we needed. Working class family, never had a lot when we were younger, always tried to give us the best, inspired education in us, always gave me a round of applause if I crossed the road. That's my dad. And watching him like now struggle, and watching my mum, who's got the empathy of Ted Bundy, that is something that's kind of quite challenging.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, anyway, so that's why this year we've kind of not been able to do it, because I have dropped everything, Peter's dropped everything, my brother's dropped everything, and we literally haven't done anything but look after dad and mum. That's been it. So I'm just starting now to get back into my TV work, that which remains. And
it's just like I say, a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's just it's still a way to go with stuff.
Not that it's a depressing one, this, by the way. It's just like as a way of an explanation.
You know what? I'm almost sure that anybody who comes across this podcast, if you listen to this point, they'll be totally be able to empathise, and they'll be like, that's exactly what we've been through. Or,
Bit heavy if you've just hit it today.
yeah. You know, we do a bit more light-hearted stuff sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
But, it's just that's why we've not been here, have we? So we're gonna try and ramp up the YouTube
Catch
channel.
up a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna do a few more bits and bobs. We've got some things in the pipeline with some live stuff and that, haven't we?
Yeah, lots of good things coming
Yeah.
up. We've got one of those situations today where we're trying not to like be too invasive as parents, but we're really excited because our youngest boy, who's 14, like he's one of the kids of this generation where they don't really leave the house. They go to school, they come home, they do the homework, they go on the headsets, they chat with all the mates online.
Fortnite.
There's just literally very little social engagement, whereas my eldest son has always been a little bit more sociable. He's always been out. He kind of goes out quite a lot. He goes out to matches, watches footy, doesn't he? And he's got like quite a big group of friends. He's also really, really popular. My eldest boy is an Instagrammer. He's got like 65,000 people who follow him. And he's just like one of those kids who has a really humble approach to life, but everybody's just like, you are so lovely. So I think being the brother of somebody who's known at his school, and literally everyone knows his brother, everybody likes his brother, everybody wants to be friends with his brother, and that's not me bragging, that is just a state of play. I can't believe it. I was a nightmare at school. I was so socially awkward at school, but this just amazing. But his younger brother, if you've ever been to school as a sibling with your elder sibling, I didn't have to, I went to a different school. It can be a bit of a challenge, can't it? So I can hear them coming down the stairs.
Do you think I'll come in? Oh, no, I've got in the toilet.
Got in the toilet, so I'm going to have to keep it quiet because I don't want to be talking about this exciting moment. We keep it real here, don't we, on the podcast? It's always in the kitchen. We don't move. We don't go use the studio. We actually do it really here. So basically, he said the other day, and this is a few weeks ago, he's been started going to Manchester, like, at the weekend, and we're like, don't want to get like excited. We're just like, yeah, you go, yeah, you know, like throwing money at him. Go on, go and get yourself some stuff. Because he had a really crappy birthday this year because my dad harmed himself on his birthday. So we just didn't celebrate it at all. So he said to me the other day, they're gone now? No. Yeah. So he said to me the other day, can my mates come and stay at the weekend? There's a party on. And I was like, it took me all my strength not to go out and buy them vodka. I wouldn't really, but you know what I mean? You're like, get the diamond white out. And all week I've been trying to negotiate this, and I'm like, oh, are your friends coming? They're twins. And he's like, oh, I don't know whether the mum's going to let them come. And I'm like, the mum is going to let them come. So I ended up getting her number and like literally basically sending a parental CV to her.
Parental CV.
This is who I am. This is what I do for a living. This is why you should let your children come.
It's like a homemade CRB check.
But I'm really chuffed because she said yes. So we've got these two lads upstairs right now, and they're going to this party afterwards, and then they're going in the hot tub. And we're so excited because we're like, finally, our kid isn't weird. They have real friends.
And it's like twins. It's like 2 for 1, so it's brilliant.
And his brother's away in Iceland this week, so it means that he's got like run of the house and he can be like the head of the household. But when you go upstairs and see him, which is what we've done a few times, he's got this like, oh yeah, like parents are so uncool. That's what it's like. You're like, hi, how are you? And it's like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Do you want any food? Nah. And you're like,
What
actually,
I've
that
done.
sounded like Rihanna then. Nah.
Yeah, I go into this like, you know, I'm a cool dad, but then just totally embarrass myself. And I start to realise that like, my gosh, I'm middle-aged.
Yeah, he's like an over pleaser.
But I'm cool, man. So what I've done is I've opened my studio door.
One day they'll realise that he is cool, but right now he's just like embarrassing dad.
Yeah, just you wait till it suddenly clicks and they'll wake up and they'll be like, hang on. My dad's got like loads of vinyl and stuff, you know.
So weird, isn't it, getting back into things, because you take a break and you kind of lose sight of what you do and why you do it. Yeah. And we've got an app coming out soon, which is just terrifying. We have no idea how we're going to run it because we have literally no money to do that. And we haven't worked for months because of that. Thank you for being savvy with savings. But we have got so much that's gone on behind the scenes in the past few years.
Oh my gosh, I cannot. To go into it, it'd be sat here for hours and days. In fact,
well, anybody who's lost a company and then thought, I'm not going to give up, I'm just going to do it a different way, you'll know that you have to have that kind of steel and that resilience. And also, I always think losing something that's important to you, it gives you the motivation to either say, this is not right and I've got to give it up, or it kind of says, no, you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm really going to do this. So that has been something that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, gosh, it's been a ride. I'll tell you that now. But you know what?
It's been like a really bad, cheap,
I started to like go into
fairground ride that wasn't good. It's like the worst ride. It's like for me, it would be the waltzers for an hour.
No, it'll be going on the eggs. The ones that like it was a big wheel, but it was eggs, and they used to spin upside down, and they were just like metal eggs. So you could sit in with a metal thing over you, which just killed you, and you spin, and then spin you around when you went around. But all you were thinking about as you're going round is thinking, this, and it's just creaking and squeaking and scratching and moving. You just think, I'm going to die. And that was the ride. It was just like, let's pay £3 to go on a ride where you've got like an 80% chance of death.
Is that where you nearly died?
No.
So you were wrong about that one.
Yeah, but it was called the Eggs, and it was in I've got Saltburn again. It was the fair that used to come down every year. Crow's Fair it was called. So they had the waltzers and all the different octopus and all that. But the eggs was the one. It was like, it was just the death egg,
I can remember the gravity wheel, which just was, on reflection, really ridiculous.
Gravity wheel?
The gravity wheel
Wall of Death?
Was probably
you stand up in it and you stand on the edges and
that's exactly it.
And
you had
the gravity wheel.
It was called the gravity wheel.
It's a wall of death.
It was called the gravity wheel. Whether you call it the wall of death where you come from, it was called the
Yeah. What do you call it? That's what we want to know.
It was called gravity wheel because you used to get on the wheel
and the gravity
held you in.
Yeah.
How
the wall of death.
Ridiculous is that?
The wall of death. I know. It's bizarre.
I mean, you had like a little strap across your belly and it just span round really fast and you were in the air.
Well, you were lucky. You had a strap.
We had it was a black, like a little black kind of...
They didn't have it where we were. And hence maybe the name of the wall of death. Maybe.
Just to say, though, the strap would not have had any impact.
It'd be like, it was a circle and everybody would do the same thing but sitting on the edges and it'd go and spin round and people would be like flying off, like flying over the other side.
I just remember that in the 80s, health and safety was negligible. Another thing that's changed since we last spoke is that Pete's decided that he's now a baker. So my husband has suddenly recognised the joy of mindful baking.
Yeah, I missed the butcher out because I don't want to be a butcher. I've wanted a baker. And after this,
I'm okay if you want to be a candlestick maker. That's absolutely fine. But I decided to teach him how to bake and he's taken it very, very seriously. We've had in the past week a carrot cake, a coffee cake, a Victoria sponge cake that he made for Valentine's Day for me. We've had a lemon bake cake, which was absolutely delicious. And I am missing one. It's a red velvet cake.
That was the first one, red velvet cake.
That was really good.
It was like going hardcore straight away. I'm
fact.
actually eyeing up other people's cakes to see what I would like to make next.
I have to say that your cake and my cake is better than any other cake that I eat when I go out.
Yeah.
I do think that when they make them look really pretty to sell, you lose something. It's almost like they spend so much time trying to make them look pretty, they're not thinking about the actual cake.
I mean, I made the Victoria sponge during the week, and I was just scared because I did it by myself, this one, so Emma wasn't there to sort of guide me and stuff. I did it by myself, and I was thinking, is it the edges burnt? And obviously, I didn't want to cut into it to have a look because it was for Emma, It was, and it was just still.
I forgot Valentine's Day, but never mind.
You don't worry about that. It's all right.
I didn't. No. But what was really funny with Pete is that if you're married to a man, you probably have exactly the same. When a man, sorry guys, I'm going to be really gender specific. When you are a man, when you bake something or make food, it's almost like you wish for them to be professionally appraised. It's not enough for you to witness people enjoying your food. You need a detailed breakdown as to why that you enjoy their food. You need then to compare it to at least 3 other experiences of eating a similar dish, stating why the dish that you've been given that evening is better. This is what you are like. You watch the kids, for example, the other day eating that cake, and you just couldn't deal with it being, it's good. It was like, is it really good?
Now, hang on. When Evan ate the Victoria
you
sponge,
asked him, is it good?
And he actually, when I went up later on, I was walking past his room, and he sort of looked at me and he went, "Oi," and I was like, "What?" And he went, "That cake was decent."
Yeah.
And it was decent.
Yeah.
You did well there, he said to me.
Yeah.
Which then made me think.
Which he would never do with me because he knows I'm not that needy. him eating the cake would be enough for me to go, oh, he's enjoyed the cake. He knows what you expect. And that was a perfect example. After he told you several times it was good, you went to the top of the stairs and he then told you again just to be sure that you understood that it was good. Yeah. But anyway, he's getting into baking. And anybody out there who thinks that baking is difficult, it's not. It's so good. It's such a good escape, isn't it? After the crappy times we've had recently, such a good escape.
It's a good form of mindfulness. And also, if you know, do it together, you know. I found doing it
well, I mean, I'm not really into doing it together. That's a you thing. You're needy. But he's good at doing it, so that's all that matters. So I think that in spite of our challenges, we're still trying to kind of do things that make us feel a semblance of normality in the difficult territory and waters.
Well, we missed out the cheese onion pie as well. I made a cheese onion pie as well. So I started to the thing is, I started to make the cake the other day, and I started to get like pastry making stuff out, and then I realised I'm not making a cheese and onion pie, I'm baking. It's opposite ends of the spectrum, really.
He does make a decent cheese and onion pie. It's not quite as good as mine yet, because he just doesn't quite get the ingredients right.
Yeah,
you're not quite good with mustard. You've just got mustard. You've got to put a bit more in it. But the point is, he's doing really well. We're really impressed with him, and he can now make enough meals to feed the children, which is amazing when I'm away.
I really genuinely never thought I'd be asked with baking, and cooking. But yeah, I can see the sort of like attraction to it now. You know what I mean? But it's just, you know, I need to just build up my repertoire of different formats of cake that I can make, you know.
Isn't it funny, when we started this podcast, we were talking about me having an existential crisis and the fact that I felt like I was at middle age and that there was this like existential crisis where I was figuring out meaning, and since then I haven't had time to contemplate any of it because it's just been one thing after another. Yeah. It's like literally one thing after another, and it seems that the way to deal with an existential crisis is to ignore it. Ignore it. Find things to fill your time, and then the existential crisis disappears because you just can't be arsed looking at it anymore. Yeah. That's been another thing. I think we're too indulgent. I genuinely believe that it's time to stop being indulgent. Literally, think about it. You get any self-help book, it's all about you. You listen to empowering quotes, it's all about you. You're told to be strong, you're told to believe in yourself, you're told to do all of these...
generically
believe. The point is, it doesn't make sense, because if all you do is deal with introspection, then you become selfish, self-centered. You think that your needs are the only ones that matter. You have too much time on your hands to find any real reasoning as to why you'd be happy. And the contentment that you'd receive from doing things that actually have meaning for others disappears because you're constantly thinking that you need to protect and look after yourself. And I'm kind of at that stage where I think the happiest I am is when I have things to do for other people. Like I said to you the other week, so me and Pete have got like a differing experience in life. I don't really like people who can't cope. I know that sounds ironic because I'm a practitioner in therapeutic intervention, which means I should ideally understand that people can't cope. But I also think that I have an impatience with not being content. And my job as a practitioner is to make you realise that you can find contentment. Now, lots of people will disagree with me in that respect. And believe me, when I'm saying this, it's not to say this is how it is. It's just how I find life. But Pete is a stressor. And you're also not very good at managing a lot of stress in any way, shape or form, are you?
No.
I mean, I think you're going to try and get better at it. But it is our main fallout in life is that you're not strong when I need strength, if that makes sense.
I've got to it's all about, when it's times of stress, it's like my brain's like goes into like a book. And it's just someone's like flicking the pages. It's like, oh, hang on a minute, stop a second. I need to stop so I can describe it as really.
But I also think that because of that attitude of mine, I was saying to you, wasn't I, that I constantly, when things are going really wrong, so like with my dad, for example, I'm really good at getting things sorted out. It's what I do. And I'm good at managing like 10 different things at the same time.
Not just with your dad, man.
No, I might have to write whilst I'm doing this, that and the other. I'll be earning money, not in front of the TV screens, but doing other things behind the TV screens that I can do on my computer. I'll be managing the hospital, I'll be managing the fight, I'll be doing all those things. And I realised that one of the things that we do in life, and it's just obvious when you think about it, and probably other people have worked it out, but I always say that you should vantage, you should look at other people's positions and see it through their eyes. And I don't think I do that very often. And I think I was saying to you, wasn't it, when we'd had that fallout because you'd not been great around with dad that day, that I get angry with people for not doing what I can do, but I should stop thinking that way and should start feeling proud of what I can achieve and what I can do, but also have an empathy for the fact that not everyone can do that. And the example I gave you, wasn't I, was that I am like really sturdy in a crisis. Like if you have a crisis, I am the person to be with. I will make sense of even the most nonsensical circumstances and give you reason for enduring them. I will be the person that will make that really bad day seem completely manageable. And I will be that person who financially will sort it out. I'll plan things for you, I'll organise things for you, I'll sort things out for you, and I will make your life better. That's how I operate, right? But I'm terrible at art. I'm really bad at maths. I'm dreadful at pretty much every other life skill. Like if Pete leaves me, I will never be able to break into the computer because I will not know how to do any of the online banking, right? There are all these millions of things that I suck at.
I'm needy, I'm not leaving you.
But I suck at them. Like I don't just do them badly. I am absolutely a bailout on them. But that's what I'm saying though. My strengths are the ones that are very prominent in life because they're the ones that you kind of use on a day-to-day basis that are obvious. But actually you are way better at a billion other things than me. And yet I judge you really harshly for the bit that you're not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
And it's so weird. It's like trying to kind of remember that in the back of my mind and have like more of an empathic approach to people are not failing.
It's like you join a stick man and me kicking right off because it's shit.
That's exactly it.
That's a shit stick man.
It actually would be.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Get better. Get better or I'm leaving you.
I cannot understand why your stick men are that crap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And that's the thing. It's like I am judging you on one element, a big element that's really important to me.
Yeah.
But if,
what are you doing there, Emma, with those decks? Are you mixing the track together? Ooh, that's bad. That's shite. That's it. Get better.
I'd be better at that.
Yeah, you would.
I would be able to learn that.
Yeah, you would.
I'm talking about the other fundamentals.
I know, I'm joking.
I know. It wasn't a great joke.
It wasn't, was it?
No.
I'm not very good at jokes. I'm just inherently funny.
You're inherently something.
Yeah. Go on then. What were you saying?
No, I agree. Like that's just it.
It's a good way of
But I don't think we do
describing
it
that.
enough, do we? And again, that comes back down to what I was saying before about that whole indulgence. It's like, this is how it should be because this is how I see the world. And it's not the way the world runs.
There is nothing more pleasing though, isn't there, than, excuse me, there's nothing more pleasing than giving stuff to people. You know, like being kind to someone, doing stuff and watching their faces and what. And you're not doing it. There is some way of self-gratification, isn't there, really, with being kind because you feel good being kind, so it's sort of that sort of...
I mean, you feel good having impact.
Yeah.
I think there's anything wrong with that self-gratification.
I don't like those people that do it online, though, where they just go and record themselves giving bloody money to tramps and homeless
so
people and
weird.
just going, hey, look, everybody, I'm giving this man some money and food, you know. What are you going to do with it? There's a scratch card, mate. Go on. You know, it's like, just do it, you know, just... You know, chat to them, or and give them whatever you need to give them, or help them. You know, don't stick it online because it's good for your channel. You know, it's just.
It's weird that stuff at
do
the
it.
moment, isn't it?
Yeah, just don't. That's not for me. That's not what it should be about. You know, and if I was a homeless person and they come to me, I'd be like, "What are you recording it for, mate? If you want to give me something, give me it. You know, I'm not doing too well. I don't want to go on your channel. You know what I mean? So that's just. That's a different thing altogether, isn't it? You know, it's just if you're going to be kind, just be kind. You don't have to record it and show everybody because that's not really you being kind. That's you just being kind just for your channel.
I guess arguably though, if the money that they're getting from the channel is what funds that kind of interaction, then at the end of the day they're doing something, aren't they? Don't get me wrong, I agree, I don't like it. But if they're raising issues around homelessness and they're giving money out, I suppose from their perspective, I'm not saying I'd do it, I'm just saying from their perspective they're doing something. It's a really good app out at the moment called Olio, have you seen it?
No, what's that?
Basically it's a food app and it's free food. So people like Pret a Manger have joined it. Basically what you won't know about food is that it's really, really expensive under health regs for shops to get rid of any wasted food. So I just assumed that it was one of those things that you just chuck in the bin, but apparently it's not. Yeah. And so Olio have created this app where anybody, like I could be like, hey, I've got a Victoria sponge, I've only ate half of it, anybody want to come and collect it in my area? People just turn up at your gaff, take it. Pret a Manger is a commercial one where they're like, right, we've got this, and this, you just pop yourself on there, you say you're going to be there, you get there at a certain time, they give you your free sandwich.
What's it called?
Olio.
Olio.
OLIO, I think.
That's amazing.
Well, it is amazing, and they've already got like 500,000 members.
What a really good idea that
and
is.
And it is incredible, and anybody can join it. It's completely free to join. It's called Olio, OLIO. It's the food sharing revolution. And it's incredible. And people are like, if I go on it now, in my area, the people have got some green chilies in a jar, an unopened choc cereal, a strawberry ice cream tipping, a slimming world onion gravy, veg prep food Friday 9pm, so 9pm on a Friday. I guess the final thing that we haven't really talked about is catching you up on our IVF journey. So just before kind of we went wrong and everything fell in on us recently, we talked about the fact we were working with Create Fertility to look at a last-ditch attempt to have a baby. Anybody who hasn't heard this, I have miscarried 5 times, and I have 2 amazing kids, both Clomid babies, so both fertility drug babies, and we've just never been able to get further than we require. 9-10 weeks, and then we've lost. So Create have been brilliant. They're natural fertility, which means that basically you kind of natural cycle, they check out your egg, they see whether it's worth getting, they take it out, and then hopefully down the line they fertilise it if you get lucky. It's not looking great for us. I have really low ovarian reserve, which means that it's highly unlikely they'll get an egg. Secondly, I'm older, and most importantly, you know, even though most women of my age have got quite a lot of eggs still, mine are so low that the chances of getting a good one, so a grade 1, which would be required, is almost, you know, negligible, maybe 1%, 2%. So we're quite pragmatic over it, we're quite sad over it, but we're accepting that this is the way it is. And we did say that we were going to get closure, whatever happened. So that's where we're up to. It's also quite hard work because when you're doing natural cycles, you have to just go for scans all the time to make sure that the egg's developing, to decide whether they're going to take it out. And they've been amazing with us, like 6 cycles of it. We haven't had one yet because my eggs haven't been any good, and also because we haven't been able to make the appointments recently. So that's where we're up to. So sorry that we're just rushing through that. There are lots of emotions associated with it, but there's no point ruminating on anything that we can't control. You know, we're doing the best we can, we're getting the best help we can. Whether it will ever happen is highly unlikely, but Create Fertility are amazing.
And if it doesn't happen,
yeah,
we'll just adopt, like you said.
Yeah, we'll probably do that anyway.
Yeah.
But I suppose the thing is as well, it has been really nice working with Create because they've been such a different experience. I mean, honestly, when we were working with other IVF clinics, we felt really, really badly treated. Yeah. We felt sold to. We felt like we were just on a conveyor belt. Create Fertility, literally, you are there for hours. Yeah, nothing is too much, is it?
No, they'll just get you in there and chatting away and make sure you're okay.
Coffee.
Oh, constantly, yeah. It isn't just in and out.
I mean, we must have been 2 hours the first time we were there with this consultant. He was amazing. And they really make you feel like you are on a journey that they can't promise, and they're not saying that they're going to get anywhere positive result for you, but you feel like they're holding your hand, and that's a really nice feeling. So I'm always really open about this stuff because I think there are loads of women and men out there who struggle with fertility, and more today, and also women like me who've had careers, and you know, you've maybe had a situation where your marriage broke down, you've always wanted more children, because for me, I wanted a big family. And it was hard enough finding out I couldn't have kids naturally. Meeting Pete meant that obviously I had another roll of the dice, and falling naturally a few times as well, which had never happened. So I fell pregnant 3 times naturally. That was really, really important. No, 4 times naturally, and then one that, IVF. That was something that was like, hang on, we're being given a message here. So it's really difficult, but it's also, we're in the right place, and whatever happens, we'll figure it forward. Absolutely. And we will have kids, whatever. Yeah. Even if it means 4 boys from some horrible environment coming and spending the rest of their lives with us, they'll be doing something that makes a difference. And I can't live without kids. I literally, my boys are 16 and 14 now, yeah? Because like obviously I had them when I was 15. So because they're so young and I'm so young, but they're old enough to be leaving home in the next few years, the idea of us not having a house full is just depressing. Like New Year's Eve, we had my boy, he had his friends around, my eldest boy, and he's got like 4 really, really tight friends, hasn't he? Like really tight friends. And it was just music to our ears, wasn't it? They went to a party, they came back, they went in the hot tub, they made loads of noise, but our neighbours were cool with it because it was New Year's Eve and it was fine, and we never make any noise all year.
I think they were in the hot tub till like 4.
And we just listened to them, didn't we? And we just lay in bed and we were just like, they're our boys. And they're like, loving life, you know.
Laugh, weren't they? They were really enjoying it.
It was awesome. It was so good.
Yeah,
it's such a beautiful thing to be kind of seeing that as they develop.
I'd rather have them like sort of stay and hang out here and stuff, you know, growing up. So
I
then they've got,
know.
you know,
I know.
well, eventually we'll do something in the back garden where they can all just come here and chill. you
Yeah.
know.
It's all right because my youngest thinks he's going to have a gap year and he thinks that's just staying at home and chilling out. So he's probably going to be here till he's about 47.
Yeah.
But I'm cool with that. I had those babies. I'm their mother and they are my responsibility. And if they stay here forever, I will protect and look after them. And I don't care how you judge me for that.
It's like our little crow family that we have in our back garden. It's extending. So we had 2 crows that came last year. They had 2 babies that fell, and if you know anything about crows, I didn't, but I have to look it up, and they actually stay on the ground from a week to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So the crows let them go on the ground and then look after them from above and like scare off anything that tries to attack them. So they were in our garden wondering about these 2 crows until they grow big enough to fly, and then the crows with the baby, my mum and dad crow teach up the thing. So but then they live here now.
Yeah.
So there's 2 baby crows.
Little tribe.
And then they live with the mum and dad, but then another one's turned up. So I guess the other one that's turned up is one of the
new
mates.
males. Yeah.
So
We've
there's
also
5.
got loads and loads of blue tits in the garden.
Yeah, we've got like a proper... Bill Oddie should come round. Chris Packham and Bill Oddie.
I'd rather have Chris Packham.
Yeah, Chris, yeah, he's all
I
right.
love Chris Packham.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a hero for me. Chris is just nice.
Well, he's vegan now, isn't he? He tried being vegan in veganuary, and he's stayed it.
I just know too many people who know Bill. So it's definitely Chris for me every time.
Yeah.
And on that bombshell, we'll say goodbye. And hopefully you've caught up a little bit. You know what's been happening. We'll resume normal service. Hopefully we're talking about more fun things.
Yes.
And I hope you're all well. And hope that if you've listened to us this far, you'll forgive our absence. It has not been without reason. Take care.